What up? I'm Chet Popelka, and this is the Braves TomaBlog. I'm coming at you with a podcast after we've had some time to recover from the postseason loss, and now we're getting ready for the most hyped offseason in recent Braves memory. I can't recall a more exciting offseason, and I think what's been interesting to see is the excitement going from like, hey, we made the postseason, we lose in the postseason, there's no downtime. Everyone started talking about, all right, what do we do? What do we do this offseason? It's because the offseason, we were talking about the offseason 2 years ago. We were talking about this coming offseason 2 years ago. The season we weren't expecting, and that was exciting, but this is the good stuff. This is what we've been anticipating. And so the Braves are in this situation where you already won the division. You already are the favorites in the division in 2019. You already probably had the best roster in the division, and you don't even have to make a move, but yet we have a couple open positions. We have $65 million by my estimations in available salary. We have the best prospect trove of trading pieces in the league. A slew of new teams that just decided to throw in the towel, along with a bunch of teams that already were. It's a massive buyer's market on the trades front. And then a historic free agent class, or what was anticipated to be a historic free agent class. That's all available to the Braves, and they are already on house money. It's the most exciting offseason in recent memory, and so that's awesome. Typically what I would do at this time, or at least what I would always like to do at this time, is sort of scale out chronologically how the Braves offseason will go and how I anticipate that it will go. I did that back in 2016, and it was pretty accurate if you check it out. It doesn't mean it was a good offseason, but I did that. And then in 2017, we didn't have a GM. John Coppolella resigned by this time last year, and we were asking who's going to... Dayton Moore, what's up? And so we had to wait on that. And so the Braves didn't do anything last offseason. This offseason, it's incredibly exciting to see what's going on. And we have Alex Anthopoulos, the great deal maker of other organizations, is now at our helm with all of the things he needs in order to make a great deal. What I want to talk about today, though, instead of laying it all out chronologically, I'll do that later. I want to spend a podcast just talking about the ace market. We are in the ace market. That's different from the pitching market. Let me establish the difference between the ace market and the pitching market. People that are in the ace market are not in the pitching market. People that are in the pitching market need pitchers. They need bodies. And so that's where you see teams enter the pitching market, and they give out these big, absurd contracts to people that don't deserve it, like Scott Kazmir and Rich Hill and Brandon McCarthy. That's just the Dodgers. But teams enter the pitching market all the time. We were in it 2 years ago, and we just need bodies. So we signed Bartolo Colon and R.A. Dickey and trade for Jaime Garcia just to get bodies in the rotation. We don't need bodies in the rotation. We have a full cast of bodies in the rotation, and that's with losing Anibal Sanchez. We're full on bodies in the rotation. That's not what we're interested in. The teams in the ace market are entirely separate from that. When the Red Sox added Chris Sale, they weren't looking for a pitcher, they were looking for an ace. The Houston Astros had already won the World Series last year when they added Garrett Cole. All right, they're good on pitcher. And when they added Justin Verlander, it wasn't because they were like, oh, we need a pitcher in here. They said we can get Justin Verlander to come to our team. Why? To win the World Series. That's why you add an ace. You add pitchers to get you more wins. You hope for good starting pitching to get you a division. We already have that. We're looking for an ace so that we can win the World Series. And that's an exciting market to be in. And the best part is that you see recent trends in the ace market. They work. They work really well, especially on the trade front. And so that's what I want to explore today, is the Braves' options in the ace market, which they're now legitimately entering into. The Braves have always dipped their toe in the ace market, make the call, what's it going to cost for Chris Sale, what's it going to cost for Chris Archer. This time they're in it. And it doesn't mean that they're going to pull the trigger on it, but this time they're in the ace market and they're going to be looking to pull one off. At least I would sure love it if they did. But it doesn't mean that they're definitely going to, and it also doesn't mean that they can't in the future. We can always trade for an ace. Because there tends to be, every year, there's about 2 or 3 aces that are on the market. So anyway, as far as the aces that are on the market, I see 4 legitimate ones, 3 that the Braves can get, and 6 total, including Michael Fulmer, give or take, who, to me, at best, he's a number 1, so you'd be adding another Fulton Nevich, but I think that he'll be considered in that market. So anyway, the two people on that back end of the market that I think are on the market but not really, Michael Fulmer and Noah Syndergaard. Their teams would be happy to trade them, just not right now. I think that both teams would be happy. The Mets and the Tigers would look to trade Fulmer and Syndergaard when they get healthy and rolling again. And so then everyone goes like, oh, this is Syndergaard and Fulmer. And they're like, yeah, now you guys want to pay full price for them. That's what those teams are looking for. And so I don't think that they're available this offseason. I think that they're probably available next trade season. So that leaves 4 guys and 3 that I consider legitimate options. The 4 guys are Clayton Kershaw, Jacob DeGrom, Zack Greinke, and Madison Bumgarner. Clayton Kershaw is going to opt out of his deal, and everyone on the face of the planet knows there is absolutely 0 chance that he's an Atlanta Brave this year, and there's a 99.99% chance that he's back in Dodger Blue next year because he's going to opt out. But there are only 3, maybe 4 teams that can afford to bring him in. That's the Dodgers, Cubs, Yankees, and Red Sox. The only team that's going to go after that, because the Red Sox are at capacity, the Cubs, do they really need to try this again? The Yankees might try to land Kershaw, but at the end of the day, the Dodgers are never going to get outbid for Kershaw. Or if they do, it would be because the Yankees made it like a franchise, like destroying mistake, offer him like $50 million a year. And if so, the Dodgers would be like, that's fine, you can have him. That's what could happen. Either way, Kershaw's not coming to the Braves. So that leaves DeGrom, Greinke, Bumgarner. And I want to spend the rest of the podcast essentially breaking them down because I think that there are 3 legitimate options that the Braves can enter into the discussions for and open up about trading for them. Kershaw's a free agent, but those 3 are trade candidates. And so they can trade for each of these guys, but it's very different circumstances. So I want to break down each of those and look at what that will take. So for one, I'll start with DeGrom. DeGrom, of course, going to win the Cy Young this year, just had a historic season. One of the best pitchers or best pitching seasons in recent memory. On one of the worst teams to have one of the great pitchers in recent memory. He would have gone 25-3, I think it was, if they had averaged 3 runs per game in his starts. He would have been amazing, but that didn't happen. Circumstance with DeGrom is that the Mets are a horrible team. They're a garbage team, a garbage franchise that likes him, and he likes them, and they want to stick together. Sandy Alderson just stepped away, and so they're literally looking for a GM right now. This is the question that the GM has to answer. This is the main question that they're being asked as they're being interviewed for the job. What do you want to do with Jacob DeGrom? And so it's sort of up to ownership. I mean, the guy who gets the job is going to have to answer the question, what do you want to do with Jacob DeGrom? So DeGrom is, of course, on the market. We talk about, it was Christian Yelich on the market, Garrett Cole. Was Garrett Cole on the market last year? Not really until they got the offer that they wanted. Same thing with DeGrom. We always go, is he on the market? Yeah, for the right offer. Of course he is. Here's the circumstance with DeGrom. If the Mets are going to trade DeGrom, that's the move. That's the thing that they're doing. That's the first Jenga stack being pulled out in what has to be a rebuild. If you trade DeGrom, you have to blow it all up. And so they haven't decided to blow it all up yet. And so for them to get the return on DeGrom, it's not as simple as we want to get the return that we want for DeGrom. We want a return that's going to convince us to start a rebuild. That's what they want for Jacob DeGrom. And so it's going to cost anyone that does it an absurd prospect haul. More than what was given up for Chris Sale, more than what was given up for, Quintana, more than what was given up for Verlander, Garrett Cole, any of those guys. It's going to cost more than that to land DeGrom because he's that good, and the circumstance is that the Mets have to be convinced to start over. Is that what they wanted? And so from there, then you look at the Braves. For the Braves to get DeGrom, it's so much more. So what that means is that not only do you have to convince the Mets, hey, I got a prospect return so good that I want to rebuild. They need that from anyone, but from the Braves, it's going to cost you Ronald Acuna. I don't see any other way. And it's not because it sounds petty, and it is petty, but it's not about, is that a fair return for Jacob DeGrom? And you might say, Ronald Acuna, but we have Christian Pache, we have Ian Anderson, we have Kyle Wright, we have Austin Wright, we have all these things to trade. Can't they just pick from those? Can't they just pick 5 top prospects and not Acuna? They can't. Here's why. They can't trade the best pitcher they've had in years. They can't trade their Cy Young winner in the division and then let us have Ronald Acuna and Jacob DeGrom, not at the same time. They need to have a prospect return so good that they want to start a rebuild. But then they need us to question if we made the right move. They need to be there to be a clear power shift. They need to win the trade for them to do that. They're in the position of power for that one. And so for them to get DeGrom, I don't see any prospect package that we could give them. And Acuna's not a prospect, but I don't see them. Maybe they would take Albies instead. I don't think that we would do that though, especially with all the options. So I think that DeGrom is possible to get, but I think that we're severely underestimating what he actually costs. It's not just about that you have to convince the Mets to restructure their organization from this trade package. You have to make sure that they're happy about trading DeGrom to you. And I have a hard time seeing that working out. And so that's DeGrom. Next, I want to talk about this gets me so excited. Madison Bumgarner. Super different circumstance. For one, I didn't talk about DeGrom. DeGrom is 29 and he has 2 years left and he's arbitration eligible. He just had a historically good season. He made $7 million last year. I think he'll make about $15 million. So not the point. If you have DeGrom, you have $15 million to make room for. Same thing with Bumgarner. Bumgarner is on a 1-year deal, he has 1 year left on his deal, and it's $12 million. He got signed to an extremely team-friendly deal early in his career. And similar, but not quite the same circumstance. For one, it will be cheaper because it's 1 year. And he's 29 years old. So if you trade for him, you do have the option to sign him to a long-term contract. He's 29. I don't know how well he will age, but I do know that Madison Bumgarner is a stone-cold killer. And so I would take a 35-year-old Madison Bumgarner in Game 1 and Game 7 of the World Series, even if he's buns, even if he's terrible, because it's Madison Bumgarner. And the dude is just ice cold, and he wins postseason games, and that's what we need. So getting Madison Bumgarner obviously would be a huge deal. So right now we throw out Foltynewicz versus DeGrom, Foltynewicz versus Scherzer, Foltynewicz versus Nola. You have to ask the question, how are the Braves going to find a way to win? Sometimes Foltynewicz can outpitch them, and he did this year. I think he outpitched DeGrom once. He definitely outpitched Scherzer. He outpitched Strasburg. That's happened before, but the Braves have to find a way to win. You throw out Bumgarner, that question goes away. Bumgarner versus Nola, Bumgarner versus DeGrom, Bumgarner versus Scherzer or Strasburg, 50-50. Either thing can happen. You don't have to ask how are they going to win. Same thing in the postseason. Instead of saying, how are we going to beat Kershaw? How are we going to beat John Lester? Question's gone. How are they going to beat Madison Bumgarner? Completely shifts. Advantage is on whatever team Madison Bumgarner is on in the postseason. But what it takes is that the San Francisco Giants just let go of their GM because he wasn't he wouldn't admit that the team was done, and they're very much done. They just had, I think, 3 straight losing seasons, including the number 2 draft pick last year. But before he left, he added so many horrible contracts to them. He tried to add Giancarlo Stanton. Thank goodness for them that he didn't. But yeah, they had the Melancon contract. They have Brandon Crawford and Brandon Belt signed long-term contracts. The Pence one just ended. They added Longoria on a long-term contract. And so this was a contract that's ending. And he's only due $12 million. So whoever's getting Bumgarner is getting a steal. The thing about it is that they're starting a rebuild. What do they need? They need something to kickstart the rebuild because this is the only trade that they're going to get that's going to kickstart it. You remember when we started our rebuild, we had pieces all day to trade. We had pieces for 2 years that we were still trading. We had pieces the whole time that we were getting great returns on. That's not going to be the case with the Giants. After they trade Bumgarner, everyone else is going to be it's going to be a contract dump. It's going to be a salary dump to get rid of the rest of them because it's not going to be a great return for anyone else. They're going to have to find creative ways to get rid of players after Bumgarner. Bumgarner is the last great piece, and he's the first move that I think that they'll make of the rebuild. He will be the one that they move to get the best return from, even though it's just 1 year. What that could take, I think you could probably do, let's say, I think you could do one of those, a top prospect, a top 6 or a top 10 prospect and a top 30 prospect. So let's say for Bumgarner, you go Ian Anderson, Kyle Muller, Freddie Tarnuk. I think that that's a solid return. They might want a little bit more. They might want Pache in the deal. I can see that. So you go Pache. Let's say I don't want to trade William Contreras. Lugbauer and who's a mid-range pitcher? Let's say man, I'm blanking. Luis Gohara. Pretty solid, and it's a little bit of a risk with Gohara, but you got something there. I think that that's the sort of return that you can get from Bumgarner. You get 1 year out of him, but it's 2019. Let's go for it. It means that this year we're going for it. We're going for it all, and it may work, it may not, but it's Madison Bumgarner. And then you can look in the offseason, do we want to re-sign him? It's going to be expensive, but you can look at that. Last one is Zack Greinke. So Zack Greinke is he's still good. He's still very good. Arizona signed him to that horrible contract, $206 million for 6 years at the age of 31. He's currently 34. He has 4 years left on the deal, $126 million left on the deal at an average of $31.5 million per year. He's expensive. The thing about that, though, is that he hasn't regressed. He's still very good. He's still, I think he's still an ace. He's still an all-star pitcher. He's still absolutely a game one starter on a playoff team. And he's still, you go Zack Greinke versus Aaron Nola, Zack Greinke versus DeGrom, Zack Greinke versus Scherzer. Pretty even. There's no clear advantage there. It comes down to the teams. And so Zack Greinke is still absolutely an ace, especially on our team, especially with an offense like ours. And the thing about it is that what's going on is that Dave Stewart is the one who signed the contract. He's been fired, and they have a new GM there now. I'm blanking on his name. He was the Red Sox assistant, Hazen. He took over there, and he's got these terrible contracts, and the team wasn't competitive. And so now they're losing Patrick Corbin to free agency. They're losing A.J. Pollock to free agency. And they've got this horrible Greinke contract, and they're in a situation where they're not even good or bad or anything. They're a mid-range team, but the contracts are bad enough that they can't keep the Greinke deal. Who do they want to call them to take the Greinke deal? It's us. Oh, Arizona loves sending their bad contracts to us, and we love Arizona sending them to us too. And this is not the same thing as the Bronson Arroyo one, but boy, we would love this trade. Especially because the situation is that with that contract, they are not going to get a great return from it. So if you look at what a similar situation with Verlander to the Astros, big contract, older guy, still effective. It's a 50-50 there. They got Daz Cameron, and they got a couple pitchers. I can't remember exactly what their names were, but it was one of those things where they're all solid prospects, but none of them are franchise-altering players. So if you take that and we get Greinke and we give them Joey Wentz and Gohara and then throw in Freddie Tarnuk in there or Burrows. It's a solid return, but that's not the real joy of it. The joy for them is that they're free of the contract. It's like the Yankees barely gave up anything for Giancarlo Stanton last year, even though he was the MVP, and they gave away what's his name? They gave away Starlin Castro on that. And so something you also have the option to do is that if you trade for Zack Greinke, you know what you could do? You could include Julio Teheran as a legitimate piece of that trade. That's not a salary dump for salary dump. Those are two effective pitchers. Those are two solid pitchers. And they would pitch Julio Teheran that year, and then they would try to trade him later as well. But you've got something legitimate in that trade. So anyway, you see how these are three very different circumstances. Bumgarner's on a 1-year deal. DeGrom's got 2 years. Greinke's got 4 years. $12 million, $15 million, $31.5 million. They're all right around each other in terms of effectiveness. It probably goes DeGrom, Bumgarner, Greinke, maybe DeGrom, Greinke, Bumgarner. I don't necessarily know. It's all very different, and so you have to assess what fits your circumstance. If I were to evoke my opinion on which one I would most like, I would have been shocked if you had asked me this 2 years ago. But Zack Greinke, right? I think Zack Greinke might be exactly what the doctor ordered for the Braves. I think Zack Greinke might be exactly what the perfect fit. Bumgarner would be amazing to have, but it's 1 year. Do I want to give something crazy up for that? Yes, I'm happy to. But if I can give something moderate up and I get Zack Greinke and I can get rid of Teheran in the process as well, oh my goodness. I think that might be such and it'd be one of those trades that you go I don't know how to feel about this. But the thing is, Zack Greinke is still going to be effective. He didn't lose velocity, not that he ever even had velocity. Zack Greinke is still going to be effective when he's 36. You can trade him when he's 36. You might have to trade a prospect with him, but you can still get rid of Greinke if you need to. But I don't even think that we'll need to. I think that Greinke will be your ace for 2 years, and then maybe Tukey or Soroka or someone like that becomes the actual ace. And then you've got that situation where you've got Kershaw, and then you've got Greinke behind him. I'll take that all day. So anyway, this is the look at the 3 aces that are on the market. We don't have to go for them, but it would be nice. It sure would be nice. So anyway, I literally tried this podcast twice, and it's 20 minutes every time. So anyway, I'm Shep Papelka, and this is the Braves TomaBlog. It's a podcast, YouTube channel about the Braves, baseball in general sometimes. Thank you guys for listening. I really hope you enjoyed, and go Braves.